Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Found Friday, our weekly web series dedicated to all things findability related in content marketing, search, and digital. Today, I'm joined by Moses Velasco. He's the Chief of Strategy at Social Bakers, and Ray Grieselhuber, the CEO of DemandSphere. We've got everybody here on the line, and we're actually joined today by Moses and Ray to discuss some fun topics, including personalizing your sales and marketing funnels with better content. We're also going to touch on a little bit of how to weave in some influencer marketing in there, and a little bit of the state of influencer marketing just in general, which is a kind of personal favorite topic of everybody that's on the line. So welcome, Moses. Give us a bit more information about what you do at Social Bakers and your background.
Sure. Hi. Thank you. I'm the Chief of Strategy at Social Bakers, and I've spent, I guess, probably the better part of the last decade working across digital marketing, product management, and product marketing to help our teams understand more about their audience's personalization and really product development to make marketing products that people can leverage to optimize their marketing channels and their funnel. A big part of what we do is try to reduce the cost of acquisition and increase lifetime value. So it's quite a significant game in the space, and personalization is a big part of it. So I'm really happy to be here to talk about that part of it.
Yeah, we're excited to have you join us because I know that when people go to create platforms and tools to address these needs, it's often because they've either had to encounter this struggle themselves and really understand why that's so important, or they have kind of a unique perspective on why it is that they created what they did to address that particular need. And I'm sure that we're going to hear more a little bit about your kind of approach to what that looks like that you guys provide and why you think that's kind of what would help marketers. So let's kick off today's topic, which is the current personalization issues with funnels, and whether or not people are even actually trying to do that, or are they trying and missing the mark? Are they, do they think that they've got things personalized and it's not? Do they, what is kind of the state of personalization inside of content right now?
Well, that's a great question. I think the market space today is being able to leverage a lot of the data that they come in from multiple channels to be able to really understand their audience in the first place. And I think that's ultimately a big channel and big challenge for them to try to create this personalization. For organizations really to be able to grow, they have to look beyond their CRM. They have to look beyond the data that they have in their space. And that's really challenging because they're looking to the unknown, essentially, and trying to make heads or tails of the new audiences they want to attract and the new audiences they want to bring in and the new audiences they want to nurture into leads that hopefully convert somewhere down the line, down the funnel. So being personal to an audience you don't know or have any idea about, that's extremely challenging. That's where the magic needs to happen. And so for marketers, I think it's an old practice, which I think is quite funny. Whenever I mention persona, trying to figure out who your buyer persona is, people put their hands on their heads and they start to, worry about trying to look at multiple data sources, trying to figure out from the CRM or from their email marketing campaign or people that purchased from them before or people that abandoned the cart, who is my persona? And when they do all this audience research and they get this research from third parties when they're considering campaigns to create, these persona that come across after this work through this research, do they really believe that that's the right type of persona that they want to work with? They kind of do. They've done the work, they've put in the effort, and now they have this persona. So they start creating content for those personas, and a lot of it's really based on demographics. And I think this is where the big challenge lies in personalization, is because when you start targeting for a demographic, you really miss a wide part of the audience that you might be attracting. And I'll use an example. If I want to market for watches, a higher end luxury watch, and so I maybe target a demographic like like me, an older guy, you know, with a certain flavor for watches, and I send my marketing material out for that particular demographic. But what I may miss is actually the interest. There's maybe young guys that like luxury watches, and women that want luxury watches as gifts, or young ladies that want luxury watches for their parents or for their father. And if you target on an interest over a demographic, you'll see a much wider net of audience that you can attract, and you're more able to personalize because you're looking at an interest, and you can be attractive to a much wider segment than just looking at a demographic alone. And this is kind of more of a traditional marketing approach, and we still see today a lot of marketers across social media and digital looking at demographics as a key to help them try to find new audiences. But we're starting to see a shift when it comes to personalization and looking at interests of people, and what might be likable, what might be interesting, what are the things that they watch, where are they spending their time, what profiles are they looking at across social media, or you know, what influencers they're following. And I know we're going to come back to that topic a little bit later.
Yeah, Ray, I think you and I talk about this a lot when we discuss kind of the interest in why search, and understanding how people are searching and what kinds of content people are consuming as they search is really the intent-based part of this, right? And so the cool thing to me about search is that it is interest and intent-based, right? It's not targeted at a demographic. It's targeted at whoever looked for the content is served the content, as opposed to pushing it out and saying, I think you'll like this content, what now, right?
I mean, this to me was one of the things that was most interesting about kind of what I would look at as like the newer wave of social in general, where it moved just beyond who's in your network and more about aligning people to what they're actually interested in. And people were publishing so much information every day on, you know, Instagram or what have you, with exactly what they're interested in. And I think this is what both Instagram and Pinterest and others really capitalized on. And from a marketing perspective, I think that really kind of bridged what was a major gap in understanding how audiences worked in social. With search, we are kind of spoiled because there is so much built-in demand data. We know what people are looking for. We know roughly how many people are looking for them. And I think it took kind of a little bit longer on the social side to get that information. But now there's just this huge amount of information around what people are interested in, what the audiences are trying to go for, how many people are involved in that, you know, what potential reach you could have. And so it's really cool to see that side of things, because the way we look at things broadly is kind of this big division between paid and organic customer acquisition, you know. And so there's a paid side, you can reach people through different advertising channels. And then there's the organic and content marketing and everything. And so that's what really excites us on the organic side of things. So it's great to hear that, you know, this is something that is very powerful.
We talk a lot about the kind of symbiosis between search and social here, right? We have a lot of conversations about how both on search and social, this organic style of, you know, discussing natively what it is that you're interested in on these channels is really powerful, because people, the users, your target audience, are talking about in a very natural way what it is they're interested in, right? And so I want to dive a little bit into what I think is an issue that we see some, especially in larger organizations, but really organizations of all sizes, and it happens a lot across different business types, is when we talk about personalizing content, a lot of times we'll see marketers who have access to all this information, and as you mentioned, you know, like this demographic kind of level of data, but we've also got marketing and sales a lot of times split off into these like different factions. And one of the things that concerns me is we get these bifurcations of like, hey, at one point they got all this marketing information that either was or wasn't personalized, and then there's a line, and then it moves you over to sales, and then sales either does or doesn't personalize, and those things may not always meet up. So we should talk a little bit about, you know, when we're talking about personalizing content for the funnel, it doesn't stop, you know, with marketing and start with sales, or start with marketing and stop with sales. This is a continuation.
Yeah, I would agree. And there needs to be consistency across what happens in marketing and then across the sales. And the way that we like to look at it from our product marketing perspective is we use a lot of the content that we create to build interest, to build awareness, to build engagement. And initially, that's a lot of the job that marketers are doing across social media initially, to build that awareness and that engagement and that interest. And then once the interest and engagement is captured, we have to support sales with the right type of content, the right type of enablement to change that interest into intent. And that's where the change in content really starts to affect how the customer journey moves through the particular funnel, because what somebody may research or find on the web, either through search or through social media, and they decide to take an action, that action needs to be followed up with content that's going to give them more information, that's going to follow the call to action, essentially what they've asked for. So it's really about bridging that awareness engagement content with content that drives and furthers intent, to bring that conversation either to a sales representative or an account manager to be able to carry that conversation. And I think extremely important about the other stages of the funnel is that it doesn't just stop at purchase. Or at bailout. And I think content that is built for retention and content that is built for re-engaging a potentially lost opportunity is extremely important. And one of the things I really champion within our company is building a lot of the material that goes beyond the purchase stage, that goes into the lifetime value of our customers, and helping to drive through educational pieces or through how-tos or how to maximize, how to optimize, how to take the next steps. And we found a lot of activity in looking to communicate with the part of the funnel that becomes your lifetime value customer, your advocate, your loyal customer, becomes really a way to sustain growth within the organization, because your content helps them look smarter in the eyes of their community. They start to share your information, they start to share, and they become an advocate. And it really starts to fuel, starts to sustain growth, because your advocates are helping you essentially build more awareness and engagement, which drive more people into the top of the funnel. And I think also critical to this point is that when you have those advocates or you are leveraging influencers, that you can leverage those at the right time of the channel within the funnel as well. Because a lot of times in today's marketing, you'll see that people are using advocates or influencers as a way to drive purchase intent, but they're not necessarily using it at the right stage of the funnel. So it's important to consider where a customer might be in their journey. You might want to consider the right type of influencer for the right stage of the funnel. Are you using a celebrity influencer to build awareness and engagement? Are you using a subject matter expert or micro influencer at the intent stage to help push them across the line to actually leverage them for their influence? Are you using the advocates to help them? So a lot of user generated content can really go a long ways in different stages of the funnel as well.
One of the things that we've seen that I think is kind of a funny story from a number of years ago is, and Paid does this really well, right, is purchasing for other folks, is that they will, there was a story about a woman who went into, I think, a Target or a Walmart, and she had bought, ice cream, a particular brand of chip, and something else, and they started sending her pregnancy related information, and they basically picked up on the idea that she was pregnant before she even did. She hadn't even taken a pregnancy test at that point. And she was like, oh my gosh, but they knew, right? They had picked out these very specific things. And we even look at it with Facebook, and people talk about this, is Paid does this really well, which is, you click on a specific thing, like to take your watch example, right? And then not only does that watch follow you around with all eternity, even if you bought, which is one of the really annoying things, but also, other things that target similar luxury items or other brands that are adjacent. So, we'll use kind of this idea of social and paid kind of mixing together. Is if you start dating somebody and you put that you're in a relationship on Facebook, they start showing you engagement rings, which is like, whoa, too soon. And then, after that, it's, hey, now you're engaged. Let's send you all the wedding stuff. And then as soon as you have been engaged for more than a minute, they start sending you baby things and pregnancy stuff. And you're just like, wow, you're really, involved in my life at this point, but this is what we're talking about of, they're treating life like a funnel, right? Like they're basically serving us content as we move through different stages. And you're absolutely right in this idea that we don't stop personalization and content creation at the point that somebody has taken an action or a specific instance has occurred and we pass them off to another team. We say, hey, you're inside my platform and it looks like you're looking at the competitor intelligence or competitor discovery piece a lot. Did you know that we have these other modules that are really complementary to that? And they're already a customer, they're already using the platform. What other content can we personalize that specifically addresses what and how you're using the platform, or what and how you're kind of combining what you're purchasing to make life better? And I think that works across e-commerce, B2B, all kinds of different stuff. Ray, I know that you've been, talking a lot about this recently, not just here, but in our Asian markets as well. So I know you've probably got some stuff to share.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the questions I had actually was around this idea of personalization and what you guys are seeing, Moses, on the personalization side of things. I'm assuming when you're talking about personalization, a lot of what you guys are seeing is basically looking at the different sets of interests that are out there and helping companies understand how they can personalize their content when they're creating it to those different interest sets. Is that something that's happening primarily through all of the kind of like social analytics that you guys are doing off the site, or are you able to integrate that with on-site behavior as well? And is that something that you guys try to tie together?
So we're tying together social engagement, any of the activity that happens from people across content. And so we leverage a lot of the content intelligence that we bring in from 10 years of being in social media. Yeah. And then we've also leveraged what happens from search by integrating Google Analytics and understanding the traffic that hits the website and where they've come from, and looking at the interests that come out of that. So when we do the analysis across what happens across your social pages and combine that with digital, what's happening on your web, we are able to paint a picture of, and that's why I was laughing about it a little bit earlier, is because we're able to uncover from the actions that people are taking across social and digital a picture of who they are, what are their demographics, what are their interests, more importantly, what is their affinity, what other pages or websites are they looking at, and what is their behavior. And that allows us to make recommendations, or we're able to make better recommendations around what type of content you want to create for this particular person, because now you have a persona that's been delivered to you from actions that people have taken. And this helps paint a really interesting view for our clients to be able to be more personable. They can create content that would match them. And this is a big shift that we see happening. I'd like it to happen a bit faster, because I guess, as you probably feel, an advert is only an advert unless you're actually searching and researching something that's actually really useful information that helps you. So I think for us, as a big part of our ethos is helping that usability and helping to drive better experiences for our users and for the users of our customers by helping them create more engaging, more relevant content, and by making recommendations as well. And I think a lot of the recommendations, once you understand and uncover who this unknown audience is through like a persona type profile, you're able to be smarter and attract people that are more aligned with what it is that you do with your products or services. And I think that's a better experience for everybody.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So again, like the...
No, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say the real importance here is that we're able to distill down the interests, and from the interests, this is where you can make a lot of recommendations and a lot of approach to being attractive, being relevant to your audience, to your customers.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think that the personalization on the on-site things, we've seen a lot of really cool technologies around this, and a lot of companies doing great things around this. And I think there is this huge, people are making way, but I think there's still largely a huge untapped opportunity for people to take what you guys are talking about and discovering these very granular sets of interest, almost at an individual level in many cases, and tying that to how people behave within the different stages of their funnel, and then adapting the website's behavior to that, that set of interests as well. And kind of tying those two sides of personalization together is something that I've seen. It's not something that we particularly play in, but it's something that I think is a really great ecosystem evolving, kind of pattern of behavior and site management. So it's great to hear what you guys are doing.
One of the things that I think we are starting to see, emerge as reasons why people aren't necessarily focusing on personalization seems to kind of address two different categories. And I want to dive into some ways that people can actually start to put this into process a little bit more, because we want our audience to be able to really understand, like, this is not something that's unreachable, right? And it seems to be two core things. It seems to be one, what you spoke to initially, Moses, which is they're basing things still on demographics instead of like actual personas. So it's really hard to personalize content when you're just looking at like males age 35 to 55, like with X amount of income, who like at some point have clicked on this thing. It's very hard to personalize a lot based on that, right? Because it still feels like too broad of a category. And even if you could come up with some, deeper descriptions, you may not really feel like you have a concrete idea of who that person is. And the next thing is if you actually are in a more persona based, like customer driven idea, you may feel like you have more than one type of consumer that you're really needing to create content for, because obviously if you just personalize for one person, that's easy. This idea of personalizing for a lot of people seems daunting, and it seems expensive, and it seems time consuming, and it seems like something that you need real subject matter experts or great writers and great content people to focus on. And so between those two issues, I think we see, people who haven't really gotten to that really good persona grasp yet. And then we have people who are like, I've got my personas, but I don't have the budget or the resources or the right people in to put this into play, let alone across an entire ecosystem. So let's talk about some ways people can do this, without breaking the bank.
What I think is really, really quite cool is social media is the incredible source of consumer insights. It's much bigger, broader than any of the largest companies' CRM systems out there. You can find out much more information about what people like, what they care about, what they talk about, what their opinions are, what causes they follow across social media than you would ever learn from any CRM. And one of the things that's incredible about social media is all the performance-based KPIs or the data that comes from any of the content that's out there. So if you put a post out and you get 100,000 likes and you get 50,000 comments, you think you did well on that particular post, but actually that's giving you an incredible amount of insight. And if you combine that with, billions and billions of posts across all of the channels, you're able to leverage all of the content, all of the posts that have happened across social media over the last 10 years and pull together what is relevant for my persona. I can just look at social media content by highest engagement or highest interactions or best video by engagement, and I start to understand by the interest what content is really going to resonate well with my audience. So you have real world examples of greatness, and those are what marketers can use in their campaign briefs and in their campaign strategies, because a big part of what happens today in campaign management is they will launch a product, a service, or decide to build on awareness as a goal, and they say, well, let's create a campaign. Here's an audience. I think this audience, based on our persona, is somebody we want to target. Here's some examples of content that we want to use. We want to use a video. We want to use an image. We think this is going to work. And likely what happened at the design team or the campaign management team or the creative, they will go to Google Images, they'll go to Shutterstock, they'll go to other areas and pull these images or videos of examples that they think are going to work. But they're not performance driven. There's no data behind it necessarily to say that the audience actually loved this video. How does my persona or my target audience going to react with this type of content? So what social allows us to do is first understand the actions that they've taken on our previous content or other pages. look at that information, and then we compare that with content based on performance that is really well based on interests and similar categories. You know, there's all kinds of reactions across Facebook content. So, you know, one of the challenges that's quite funny is, hey, Aaron, do something, create a campaign that's funny. You know, we all would probably sit back and struggle a little bit, but I can go to Facebook and I can pull posts based on the haha reaction on a certain topic or industry. And then I can see all of that content curated by haha reaction. And I have an example of funny, a great example of funny that I can start to use for my particular campaigns. And this is very low cost for you to use data to be relevant with an audience that cares about you as a brand.
That's so true. I think that one of the things that we have, we see as I see it as a mistake personally, in choosing influencers and picking out content for campaigns is based solely on number of shares, retweets, etc., or audience following. And I think that one of the things that we miss a lot in audience followers is that there are people who I would say influence influencers. And so those types of people may have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 followers, or a smaller kind of, you know, relevance score to a lot of people. But in actuality, the people that are following them are people that have hundreds of thousands of followers. And, you know, those people are influential in a different way, and being able to capture their mind share, being able to get in front of them is really important. And so when you're looking at whether or not your content was effective and impactful for a specific area, you have to really look at a more granular level who it is that's consuming that content or resharing that content. So just because that one person's you know, retweet or share did not necessarily garner a ton of things, the people that it got in front of and then they ended up reposting it, you know, actually happened to be exactly who you would have wanted to be. And a lot of times those influencers are easier to find and reach, right? Because they're not the people that have 1 million followers. So you may end up with a little bit of a different approach to being able to work with them. So we've got a lot of areas, I think, that, you know, and I love what you're saying about being able to sort by reaction type. I think that that's something that any marketer can go in there and do, right? Like they can say what type of emotional response is tied to this particular content. And then something that we talk about a lot here is kind of the power of segmentation. So segments can be things like products or features or personas or geographies, and then you can kind of mix and match these segment groups. And when we talk about it with search and intent, being able, I think, to layer in on top of kind of those segments of content, you know, people's reactions to the content from a social perspective is a really powerful offering, right? So if you look at the search terms that or the topics that people associate with the content, you know, similar to what you're sharing on social. So if you're sharing content on social, obviously that content has to do with something that somebody would be able to type in and search for as well. If you look at the type of content that you've got and then the reaction it got on social, you should be able to start to see, based on the visitor and demographic traffic that you're getting from your site, as well as the response type that you're getting on social, and have a much more powerful way to plan out different content campaign calendars.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where we come back to the experience and creating experiences, because you start to understand the actions that people are taking and you can build on those. And that's what I really about where we are today. You know, we used to hear it's a big data challenge, it's a big data problem, but today with AI and machine learning, it's no longer those challenges. We've stepped beyond that. And it feels like yesterday, but actually, you know, now today we've stepped beyond that big data challenge. And we're able to process that, all of that data, those interactions, the emotional connections people are making with the brand, the meaningful conversations that are happening between customers or prospects, and be able to act on those in real time helps really start to optimize any sort of campaign that's live and happening in the moment. And that for me is really exciting, because that's changing the way that we're interacting. What is, I think, really at the core of it though, is it wasn't the brand, it wasn't the business that made this change. It was like you and me, the consumer, the prospect, the unknown audience part. It was our voice across social media. It was the way that we engaged, interacted, or blocked ads across what it was that we're viewing that helped drive some of this change. So it was really, really interesting to see how the market made business shifts based on their voice. And that is something that was kind of, I hate to use a big buzzword, but paradigm shifting, literally paradigm shifting, because it was big business dictating a lot, which was hitting the market, and the advertising that was happening and the messaging that was coming out. And all of a sudden, this switch happened. It was really like the consumer, you not sitting on the marketing material, wanting something a little bit different, something more authentic, something more that caused this approach to look at how we can be more personable and how we can engage better with prospects and being able to leverage data to do that it's been amazing to see that happen.
That's great. I think this is one of those areas that I think we have probably, we could probably do like 7 more shows on this topic. There's so much to cover. It's, I mean, just looking at all the different things related to influence. We've been getting into this a little bit more on our side. We acquired an influencer marketing firm last year, and I've been learning a lot, you know, because it's something that does have some interesting parallels to search, but there's just so many different topics, and I think that the industry as a whole is growing. You know, it's going to continue to grow. What are some of what would be like the top 2 or 3 things that you think is going to happen over the course of the next 4 or 5 years in the space, and what are the most important trends to stay on top of?
Well, I think definitely what's happening right now, it's quite interesting, is Instagram becoming absolutely the rising star of social media. It just topped out at 1 billion, or hit 1 billion, probably still a long ways to go. The content formats or the reach technologies that are becoming more available is really interesting. You know, before we saw, image and video, and now live video is 10 times more effective than what video was, and now stories are much more effective than what live video is. And is it AR? Is it VR? Is that the next step for these reach type technologies?
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be quite interesting to watch and to follow as we progress with trying to have better conversations with the market.
That's a really interesting one. I think
it's going to be interesting.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to think if people were really surprised. What's been interesting to me on a lot of this is how organic and how bottoms up a lot of this stuff is. And I think a lot of times businesses who are trying to reach their consumers don't fully appreciate how much bottoms up growth there is in the influencer space. There's always new media types coming out. There's, I think one good example is, like video game streaming, where that's become a huge pocket of influencers in a very lucrative market for a lot of different companies. And it's a little bit past its not prime, but when it came out a few years ago, but it's something that continues to drive a lot of overall social changes in the way that people interact. You've got apps that are relatively new, like Discord and so forth, that are really starting to dictate the way people communicate online. And they're innovating faster and moving faster in many ways than what you see coming out of the traditional business world, or even like just traditional desktop and mobile type interactions.
One of the things that I think is important to leave everybody with, because our time has flown by today, and Moses, I'd love to have you back to talk about influencers. I think it's obviously Ray said we could do a bunch more shows, and I think we should dive into the influencer portion of this a little bit deeper. One thing I want to leave everybody with too, and I'm going to let everybody give their closing remarks, but mine is just because you have a big budget doesn't mean you need to spend it all the time on all of these new media types. You can do video and live video, and a lot of these things, considering that you need to spend $100,000 per video. I think that a lot of this gets prohibitive, and it also slows things down when you put a lot of these barriers in place, where it takes you 6 months to get one 30-second live video up. Marketers in really big organizations get bogged down by a lot of these big creative briefs and a lot of these things. And I think that if you develop these Loctite personas and you really figure out who these people are, and then you have smart content creators creating content to address them, get these things up, let them go, see how people react, see what that looks like. If it doesn't work, the great thing about the internet and social is it's gone 10 minutes later, right? I mean, it's technically always there, but you can pull it down, whatever happens. So, really consider this idea of getting your content out there and creating, because I think one of the things that we've said, kind of in the show is you need to have content to actually analyze the reaction to. So if it's taking you forever to create a piece of content and to get it out there for a reaction, you're not getting enough reactions to be statistically relevant to understand how people are consuming it. So Moses and Ray, give me your closing thoughts, and then we will have you back again to dive into some more influencer stuff.
Yeah, I'd say definitely, Moses, would love to have you back. It's a great show. I think that, as Aaron said, there's a ton more we could dive into here. I'd love to talk, if we did a follow-up show, I'd love to talk more about kind of the future and some of the things that you're seeing that we started touching on at the end there. And then tying that back to what you see with regards to personalization and what does that mean for marketers who are trying to plan out their funnel and align all their different product offerings to that. Because I think that one of the things that's becoming really tricky for people in organizations to really wrap their head around is you have to have a very cohesive product alignment strategy with your funnel and the various ways that you're interacting with your company, with your customers. And I think that most companies are really far behind on that at this stage. I think that people have not figured that out yet. And you're starting to see it very effectively with smaller, more agile companies. But it's just there's so many different aspects of what make that discussion really difficult for companies. So I'm sure you got a lot to offer on that topic.
I would be more than happy to come back and discuss it further. And just as one final thought to touch on what Aaron mentioned, do live video. It's so easy, it's so quick, and it's a great way to engage with your audience. And it's 10 times more effective than regular video, native video is today. And the one reason that brands aren't adopting it yet is fear. Fear of being live and making a mistake. But hey, if you've ever watched the takeouts of movies where people make mistakes, sometimes that's the most entertaining part of a video. People love that. People engage with it, so don't be afraid to try live video.
Yeah, I think there's something there's something almost endearing about it. You see that people just talking, just chatting, and I think people really enjoy that. It comes across as a lot more authentic, and you get a chance to look behind the scenes, I think, a lot of times too.
And I think one of the things that we should talk about on our next thing is how to use live video across more than just kind of the awareness driving aspect of your organization. I think that live video is great to answer FAQs. I think it's great for account management and customer service to get on better things. We're talking about this personalization of the funnel, and that's what I would love for us to focus on next time is, these mediums are not just for one area of your funnel. These mediums can be personalized across your entire funnel. So we will dive into that next time, and we'll probably turn this into a fun little series of conversations about some funnel personalization. So with that, I will see everybody.
Let's do live video.
Yeah, we're doing it live. So Moses, thank you again so much for joining us. Ray, as always, great to have you. And we will see you guys again next week.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Nice to meet you. Bye.
Nice meeting you too.